Good morning, everyone. This is Kellen Bateham of the NWBA. You are all joining us for, I believe, the 17th digital demo presented by the Northwest Blacksmith Association. This morning, we are getting to visit Sparta, Tennessee, to Abe Pardee's shop. We've been lucky enough to get him to sign up and show us how to make some stainless steel spatulas. I believe he's using 304, if that's correct.
Yeah, 304L.
Excellent. We've got Lisa Geertsen here, who's going to be acting as our host today. And so I'll just introduce Lisa and say, take it away, y'all. Thank you again.
Okay, thanks, Kellen. Thanks, Abe. Well, I think Kellen did most of the introductions there. I'll keep an eye on the chat, everybody, as usual. Keep comments family friendly. And if you have questions and answers, you can put them, or questions, you can put them in the questions or right in the chat. And I'll take moments where they seem to fit in to ask Abe directly what the questions that y'all have are. So here we go, Abe.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and good to chat with you and good to be here with y'all. I'm here in Sparta, Tennessee, like Kellen said, kind of halfway between Nashville and Knoxville at my studio. I've been here since 2016, running my own business, which I've managed to do so far without utter failure, which I'm very pleased with. I do want to just say, as a real quick aside to anyone in the Northwest who's got bad air right now or worse, my heart really goes out to you, and I hope everyone on the line is okay right now. So anyway, on a brighter note, I'm going to forge a stainless spatula today, and we've got some examples over here. I made a few of these yesterday, and I had a couple more lying around. This is one of the production items I've been making for a while now. And, these are something that I've been developing pretty much since I started my business. They've come a little ways from the original one that I made. I'm sure they could be more refined yet, but they've certainly gotten more refined over the past couple of years. So Lisa, real quick aside, is the camera steady enough right now, or do you want me to use a tripod? My one thought of having it held like it is that it can be a little more versatile than one can have a tripod around, but if you think it needs to be more steady, just let me know.
It seems to be okay for the moment. That last little bit you were saying got kind of quiet. So as long as we can see you guys and your camera person is moving slowly, then the video will be more clear.
Okay, no problem. We just have to move slowly. All right. Well, I've got a good heat on the bar now. This is the starting material, is 9 1/4 inches of 1/2 inch square 304L stainless. Regular 304 is really low carbon too. I just refreshed my memory looking at the spec sheet last night. And we'll talk about that in a bit, but let me go ahead and take this first heat. So I've marked it with soapstone, basically to just last me this first heat to isolate the blade from the handle material and draw the neck down. So I can still just see my mark. Sometimes it can get a little squirrely doing it. So I the room to.
So Abe, we have our first question here. Where did you mark it to isolate the mass there?
I marked 2.5 inches from the end for the blade, and 4 inches from the other end for
Okay, great.
the handle. And I don't know what the remainder is. So it's pretty simple math that I'm not willing to do in my head right now.
Sure.
And this is Kellen again, and maybe I just want to, I don't know if I told Abe this ever in the beginning. So you've got a really good headset there, but it does do some noise cancellation when you're on the hammer. And so you just can't talk while you're hammering.
Okay, gotcha. I will make sure to do my speechifying in between the most noise. So I like stainless for all these food items, kitchen items that I make, just because it cuts the maintenance to almost zero, and you don't have to worry about it. And it's really not that different to forge than mild steel. There's a few things about it that do make it different, but once you get used to using it, you know, it's not a mystery. Let's see. So obviously you want to work it pretty hot, but you can planish down into a cooler heat like you could with mild steel. You can't forge weld it. It does weld really beautifully with a TIG welder. And those of you who fabricated with stainless before know that when you weld it, it moves like crazy. So it's not really a problem if it's something you're going to forge over. But if you're fabricating something that needs to stay square or at a particular angle or straight, you really have to over clamp it or pre-bend it in the opposite direction of where your heat's going in. But for forging, the way that comes into play is I've noticed a weird heat range thing where, you know, it's a little stiffer than mild steel, but forges at a yellow or orange heat is fine. But then right when you get into a black heat, somewhere around that like 800 to 1000 degree heat, it becomes more bendy than at a red heat of like 1200 or 1300. So for instance, you can isolate a torch heat somewhere and get a nice yellow heat with the torch, and it'll bend right at the yellow spot. It won't bend at the red spot next to it, and then it'll bend again at the black spot next to that. It's a really bizarre feature of it. So some of the bending operations you would be able to do with a piece of mild, you just can't do the same way with stainless. So that's one real odd feature of it. Going back to the hammer.
So Abe, when you get a minute, we have a question. What size is that hammer you have there? Is it a 33 or 55? It looks like
it's a 55, a 2016 Annealing 55 or 25 kilo that I got fairly recently. So I'm still pretty new to that hammer. And it, for being a quote unquote little hammer, it does hit pretty darn hard. And Bujold can testify to that.
Well, that's, I thought I recognized it. That's the same hammer that we got for Pratt a while back.
Oh, gotcha. Cool.
Good little hammer.
Yeah, I'm liking it a lot so far. It's fast and it hits hard, which just means I have to get dialed into it. But
yeah.
But you know, that's coming along. I just haven't been doing a whole lot of forging for the last little bit this year, so I'm kind of looking forward to getting to do a lot more here over the next little while, and really get buddy with that hammer. Sorry, go ahead. Was there any other question?
Not yet. People just missed the sounds of the machine. Your noise canceling headset really turns off the power hammer sound. It's funny.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. I didn't realize that was a feature of my headset.
Neither did we.
Well, y'all know what it sounds like, right? Thump,
Yeah.
thump, 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 thump. So the next operation, now that I've got that neck drawn out, and I'll just say, meanwhile, I do the finish to the necks a few different ways. This is one of the, just to put a heavy facet and basically make it more or less octagonal is one way I like to finish the neck out. You can also make them fully round, profile taper, which is the most excruciating because of course then you have to go and knock all those facets down, knock more facets down, and then it's a lot of hand planishing at the end to make it as smooth as I would like it. Another way to finish this out that I like, I've got an example here I can show you, is sort of the twist, where you get it just kind of roughly round. You don't have to really planish it super round. And then you start at the fat end and planish lightly as you rotate, and you try to get a steady speed and a steady rotation as you move through the dies, and you get that nice little kind of Nautilus twist.
That's with your half round dies on that Annealing, yeah?
Yeah. And these just happen to come with a pair of dies that have a real gentle crown to them, which is really what I like.
Me
you
too.
know, a lot of crown dies are a little too aggressive, I think, for anything besides heavy texturing. But you can really do a nice planishing job with something a little softer like that. And
no, that's really nice. I love that texture you just showed us, and I do it on a lot of my work too with the similar crown dies like that. It's great.
So the next step, now that I've got another heat, is we're going to start spreading the blade of the spatula. So I've got another hammer here. This is the M4129 Soviet Russian. To my best guess, was built in 1967.
Cool.
And it's an 80 kilogram hammer. Now, is it too loud that you can't hear me now, or just when I'm striking?
We can hear you now.
But not when I'm actually banging.
Right.
So I'm just going to start directly with the fuller to start spreading the material a little bit before I set what I call the dart.
Are you doing that on the square? Yes.
Yeah. And then I'm sure to flip it so that it's even. And then I'll just do a couple blows to flatten that a little. So the really important thing here is to try to get the setup as accurate as possible. because once you really start spreading, you can't do much to correct the shape. So, as with many forms in blacksmithing, the most accuracy you can put into that initial setup shape, the better the whole form is going to come out.
Yeah.
We'll see how good I do today. There's always at least a little bit of cleanup. Sometimes there's more extra material to trim off than other times. But I try to forge as close to the final shape as I want. And, you know, when I first started making these, I think I was using like 3/4 round. And pretty quickly I realized that I had way more material than I needed. Once I sort of got the processes dialed in a little bit. And so, you know, with the 1/2-inch material, I can usually get around a 3-inch wide blade.
Great.
Kind of the standard that I'm shooting for.
I agree with you. The pre-shape of things is so important. Thinking ahead is
yeah, and especially with this, because you're basically making sheet metal. So
right.
after the first couple heats, you can't hammer on the narrow axis any longer at all,
Right.
without just crumpling it. So it's all in how you place your fuller and where you are pushing that material.
Exactly. We also have a lot of thank you to your camera person. They're doing such a wonderful job today. So.
Oh, excellent. I think she might be able to read that. Yeah, she is always a good camera person for me, and she's done a lot of my videos that we've been putting on the website and stuff. And yeah, a Jill of many trades.
Fantastic.
Right. So now that I've got that blob of material on the end flattened down to the same thickness as the neck and started to widen it, I'm going to set the dart, which is the transition between the neck and the flat material of the blade. So I've just taken some real light blows there to set that initial dart. Because if you start off soft, you can kind of correct. Because it's hard to eyeball it to dead center on the first try, or right off the bat. And I will say that if you were to do this by hand, I would do it over the shoulder of the anvil. So here I'll demonstrate real quick. Just with a cold one. So this is more or less the dart that I'm looking for. So the way to set that is you would start spreading the material in the same way with your peen of your hammer. And then you'd find a nice shoulder on the anvil that's got a little sharp radius, and visualize that angle and strike a half face blow right on that shoulder, and then turn it and do the same thing. And then you would actually use your peen and half face blow with the peen to spread, and then turn it and do the same thing from the other side. And that works really well, especially if you've got a real nice shoulder, unlike mine, to create that fillet there. And it happens pretty quickly. The nice thing about doing it by hand is that all your peen marks are on the back, on the bottom side of the blade, and you get just the surface of your anvil planishing the face of the blade. The problem is you can't watch that dart develop. So I'll even draw silver pencil lines for the angles on my anvil so that I can line the handle up with that angle and match it on the other side.
Nice. Thank you for showing us that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't let me forget, I do want to explain how one would do this by hand as well, because it takes longer by hand, but everything that I do for this, I've done by hand and can be done by hand without almost any, fancy tooling. So I'm going to refine that dart a little more and start threading dramatically. And if I do a bad job, it'll get very dramatic. So I'm just using care not to quite run into my dart there, but I want to spread on either side of it and start pulling those hips out. And I'm starting my blows in the middle at the tip and running across back so that I'm spreading the material more at the end and less back here, which gives me a blade that's got a wider shape at the end and a little narrower at the back.
Nice. So I'm noticing that when you're using your top tool, you're keeping a very gentle grip on it, is what it seems, and letting it sort of bounce around. I imagine that keeps a lot of the reverberation coming back into your hand.
It partly does that. One of the reasons I kind of float it like that is that, I'm not going to remember the gentleman's name, so I'm just not even going to bother. But someone had sort of mentioned that as a technique to me, because theoretically, when the top die strikes the back of that tool, it sets it on a course.
Right.
And so whatever course it's traveling, it's going to keep traveling that way until it's arrested. Now, if you set it on the material and have it hit, well, that's when it can shift to one side or the other if you're not perfectly level,
Right.
or get stuck on, have a friction occur on the hot material that might put it somewhere you don't want it. So, and John Reyes uses his fullers like this as well, where you kind of float it right over where you want. I'll set it when I need to set, like the shoulder, for instance. But when I start spreading, I'm kind of trying to float like a bumblebee, But yeah, it probably does help with the vibrations as well. But if you'll notice, most of my top tools, I put a little fuller in the neck. Most of them I weld on a 3/8 round handle and put a little fuller a few inches behind the head of the tool. And that acts kind of as a shock absorber. And I find that, if the handle's going to bend, it's going to bend right there, and it's not going to go into your wrist if there's
Nice.
a misflow and the force screws you up. I'm trying not to do any real cold forging on this, but once it gets thin, you kind of can't avoid it. And I think this is just a natural effect of spreading that material from one side, but you get a cup. And so periodically when it starts getting a little extreme, I'll come to the anvil and just take it out by hammering on the back side. And I'll, just like if you were setting the dart by hand, I'll just kind of put the dart near the shoulder to protect it and allow me to get a blow in there to flatten it out a bit. Because you can get it to where it's so tacoed up that you're running into the handle of your top tool.
Well, Abe, we have a couple of questions. I wanted to let you know that the bidding has started on your spatula, and we're up to $140 at this
Oh, holy
moment.
moly.
Holy moly. So thank you already. Someone
Hey,
is
guys,
asking,
excellent.
you know, all metal work hardens when we hammer it. And the question here says that stainless steel can work harden pretty quickly. Does the putting it in the forge remove the work hardening? And how do you manage that?
I will never profess to be much of a metallurgical expert, but as far as I know and experientially, you know, once you get it back up to above critical heat to a forging temperature, you've erased any stress you've put on it. And I'm really, you know, I'm doing my best to not go below that sort of 1,000-degree black heat when I'm stretching there on the hammer. I've definitely cracked it before, and you can, you know, I would say that the stainless probably work hardens and stress crack a little faster than mild if you abuse it. But yeah, I don't generally have a problem with it just because I'm really trying to ride that cusp of that last little bit of heat into the black zone before it gets down below probably 700 or 800. But it doesn't seem to be a problem. And like I was saying before, something that it just does, this one weird quirk of the stainless, is it does seem to get softer and more pliant just below a red heat. So in a way, it actually moves easier at right at the start of that black heat than at a 1,200-degree, you know, dull red heat.
Do you find that it's harder to burn the stainless than it is the steel? Like, get it too hot, or does it hold together better?
No, it burns real good if you overheat it. Yeah, I don't know if it's any harder to burn than the mild steel, but it probably is worse if you do burn it.
Yeah.
It's got, you know, 304, if I'm remembering correctly, has about 18 to 20% chromium and about 8 to 10% nickel. So that means it's only barely, not even 70% iron. So it does this thing, if you've ever forged brass or bronze and hit it when it was too cold or gotten it a little too hot, and it's gotten that crunchy popcorn hot short grain where it falls apart, you get kind of that if you overheat it. What's that?
I call it cornbread.
Cornbread, yeah, that's perfect. It does look like it's consists of cornmeal. But, you know, in the gas forge, you don't really have to worry about that, but I've definitely crisped some with the torch or in the cold forge, and you do have to watch out for it.
We have another question when you're ready. What's the maximum temperature that you're trying to stay below, so to avoid burning it?
I know it said something about the temperature range on the spec sheet. I wouldn't want to go above 2,200.
And is that Celsius? That's Fahrenheit, yeah?
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. We have Canadian, we have Canada, we have Russia, we have all sorts of places that measure things differently.
I'm so Americentric in my units of measurement. It's really pitiful. One day maybe I'll practice my metric flashcards a little harder. Yeah, Fahrenheit. So, and I don't, you know, I'm not out here with a pyrometer checking my steel when I pull it out, but a bright yellow heat, you know, you're really looking for the same heat range as mild. You know, it's going to burn around the same time as mild would.
Are you concerned at all about those levels of chromium and nickel in there with the fumes?
Maybe I should be. I do.
Sorry.
I'm pretty religious about wearing my respiration when I'm grinding it.
Right. And welding
I mean, I do with mild too most of the time, but I'm particularly careful about it when I'm grinding stainless, just because I've been told colloquially that the dust is particularly not good for you. You know, it's not like it's got zinc in it, which I know is definitely a bad fume to be inhaling. I'm a little less concerned about the chromium and nickel, but maybe I don't know any better.
Well, I know that you can taste and smell the zinc in the brass if you're forging that. So
yeah, that stuff's nasty. I try to avoid brass. So let's see. I have to decide now if I need to spread it anymore. I'm going to do just a little more fullering, and then we'll splatter it. That's about the ultimate size and shape I want, more or less. And so from here, we're just going to be flattering to try to take most of those marks out. I generally don't mind leaving some of the evidence of what I've done in the forging. Also, here, some of the bites for a second. I'll show you the wacky bending properties. That's probably about 1,000 degrees right there. Whoop! Bends like nothing. And I know I can do that just because I know about where the heat is there, and that's the narrowest point. So I can get away with stuff like that, which you almost definitely couldn't do in a piece of mild, or at least not to the same extent. It's usually more of a hindrance than a help, but once you know what to expect, you can take advantage of it.
Exactly.
Another weird property of the stainless that I wanted to share, and I don't know the chemical, physical, metallurgical way to explain this, but I think of it as surface tension. And in my mind, the stainless has higher surface tension than the mild steel or regular carbon steel. So you really notice this when you're planishing or say forging. If you've got a square profile and you forge on the corners at a lower heat, rather than the mass of the material absorbing that blow like it would in mild, it'll just move the surface material, and it's really will cold shut easily. Say if you're trying to put a light bevel on a corner at a low heat, the surface will pull out little ears instead of squeeze into the mass. So that's just another one of those little quirky things to be mindful of.
Interesting. We have another question. When you get this, after this next heat, some folks would like to see the profile of the fuller you were using.
Absolutely. Watch out for my elbow when I swing to the other side. So that actually planished out faster than they usually do. I might go and do one more quick one, but here's the fuller that I use.
Great.
So I
Is
don't
that
know
about
what
a
that
half
radius
inch?
is. Yeah, it's probably more like a 3/8 inch radius. So
Okay.
like maybe equivalent to like if you used a 3/4 round bar, or maybe
Okay.
just a hair flatter than that.
Uh-huh.
And
And
I
how
used to use.
thick are you going on the blade? Are you trying to get to the ultimate thick or thinness there?
Oh gosh, I haven't put a mic on it anytime recently, but you know, maybe 18 gauge,
Uh-huh.
16 to 18 gauge. And they're never 100% consistent, but that's kind of where they tend to end up. And I'm guessing. Well, we'll look closer at it here in a little bit. Was that the question you were asking? I might have misunderstood.
Yes, you got it.
Oh, okay.
You just have to dial your eye chrometer in.
Yes, exactly. Depends how much coffee I've had as to how accurate that is. So we'll just do a little more splattering. So I'm real happy with that. And then straighten its neck out a little bit. I don't need to be too compulsive with it just yet because, you know, there's a good likelihood that that thin section will move in the process of the next step, especially given it's stainless and it'll do that weird black heat wiggly. Now, we're going to flip it around. I'm just going to take, here if you want to zoom in on that, that's the thickness. So, yeah, I would say 16 gauge maybe.
Nice.
So I've got some flat jaw tongs that work well enough to hold it by the blade. And I'm going to do most of this forging now on the handle before I trim the blade up, because if it moves, it can bang into the edge of the spatula, so I don't want it to be too nice before I do that. I'm just going to remark my 4 inches for the handle real quick since I lost my soapstone from before. So that just gives me an idea where to set the fuller for that. How are we doing on time?
We are at 10 till, so you're on the same time zone as I am, so we're 10 to 1.
Gotcha, okay, perfect.
Elizabeth Bells is asking if you have any classes scheduled to teach anytime soon.
Well, I couldn't have paid you for a better plug than that, Elizabeth. As a matter of fact, and Lauren will correct me when I'm wrong, but I'm teaching at the John C. Campbell Folk School. Say again? End of February, beginning of March, I think.
Oh, nice. Let's all hope that the COVID keeps that on the schedule.
I would be delighted. Yeah, and it's a utensils class, so
Wonderful.
This is something that we would talk about and cover in there, amongst some other utensil cutlery projects. Yeah, here's hoping that we can do that.
Yes, all the fingers crossed. So just for everybody else in the room, the bidding is still open for this finished spatula that Abe is making today. We're still at $140, and that is going away to, I can't remember now. I think it was Anne, or I have to go through the chats. Who's going to step it up and steal it?
Come on, people.
Come on, people. Do you sell these things on an Etsy or you're off of your website?
I do. I'm not sure I have any up on the web store at this moment. We're undergoing a big overhaul of the website right now to get ready for the fall season.
So this is a rare opportunity that you're saying then? So we do have it up to 150. All right, folks. So
you'll have to wait a short while to get another one if you don't manage to snag this one. I will say that.
uh-huh.
There will be a delay. So.
Oh, if someone would like to know where you get your stainless from.
Mostly I get it from my regional steel supplier. There's a company out of Georgia, JMS Steel, who they deal primarily in just standard carbon steel and run their route right by my shop. But they can pick up some stainless sometimes. There's also a company in Nashville that specializes in stainless and aluminum, and I've used them every once in a while when I can't get what I want.
Well, we're up to 162 here.
Oh wow!
Yeah, people are starting to step up. That's good.
So this next set, I'm going to draw out the handle material, and I'm going to do it in a way that I kind of picked up from Pete Hill and Shona Johnson from the UK when they were master metalsmiths at forging on the river 2 years ago, I think. But yeah, you'll like this, I think. I find it very amusing.
Sure is satisfying to see that squishy.
Yeah, so I call this making the zipper, and then on the next step, I will unzip the zipper.
Did you just say you're making the zipper and then you're going to unzip the zipper?
That is correct.
Oh my.
So you don't have, on a hammer this size, I don't need to do it this way. But I do like, I'm going to set that transition with the fuller anyways. So especially if you're going by hand, you could do basically the same thing over the shoulder of the anvil.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll mock that up right now. So say if this mark were the mark for where my handle material starts, I'd find a nice soft shoulder like this one and drive the material right into the shoulder there. And then I'd flip it, move it down a little, drive in there,
Mm-hmm.
and do the same thing, basically just doing real sharp fullerings to quickly move the length or extend the length of that material, just to save a lot of time. You could do it with a striker and a hand fuller as well. But the nice thing about it, if you get it just right, you're staggering those fullers so that you basically are creating a noodle, a ribbon of your ultimate thickness, and then you're just straightening it out rather than actually, you know, moving the thickness of the material down one bite at a time.
Someone is asking why opposing sides instead of only one side doing that?
Because if you do it from one side, you end up with heat. So you have a thin spot and then a thick spot and then a thin spot and a thick spot. This way, you have thin, 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 thin. I can draw it out in a second if I need to.
So we're probably about to see that.
Yeah, you'll see it unwind here.
Interesting.
So it's especially on thicker material, it's a really good way to move that out fast. So I just fuller the width of that just a tiny bit right behind the transition because I want the material to taper away from the head of the spatula. So I want it widest here where your thumb goes and then to taper away to a little thinner at the back.
Mm-hmm.
So from here on out, I'm just going to be drawing that out. But did that make it clear, the advantage of doing it on opposing sides versus next to each other?
Yes, the person said their comment was, got it, thanks. Quicker and easier to keep it uniform, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah. Given, you know, as long as you have the accuracy and don't get your fuller too close to the last one or too far from the last one.
Yeah.
So here around that transition point where you can get kind of off center, get a little swirly, and you might have seen that my material bananaed off to one side. That could have been just where I was on the die, or I might have had the material at a slight angle to the die instead of straight perpendicular. But I don't think it got too far out of range to straighten it back up. You can do most of that in the course.
Sure.
Now, the neck of my spatula did bend quite a bit, but that should be straight later. I don't usually measure this part, but I know I like about 5 inches for handle material, or for the.
Oh, could you say that number again, Abe?
5 inches is
5 inches?
approximately how much actual handle I want with the finished handle. And because I'll be looping this material around, I think the target is like 10 to 11 inches, if I remember correctly. But I mostly do it by eye at this point. So I've got the shape, got the length I want. I'm just going to planish it a little, and then we're going to put a texture on it. And this is another area that I've kind of gone off the deep end with a little bit, is custom texture tools and dyes, stamping, which sort of goes hand in hand with the color stuff that I've played with for the last few years. Coming up with interesting textures and patterns that really create a high and a low where you can apply the multicolored layered paints and then remove the high spots and reveal the pattern and have the striations of the different colors. So there was a picture in the slideshow of a funky looking bench.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a specific die for the texture on the strips for the seat and the back, and I'll use that on the handle of this spatula.
We have a compliment on your power hammer tattoo on your arm there here in the chat.
Thank you, thank you. It got me a free T-shirt from Sid Sotomayor one time.
Oh, that's funny.
That's its claim to fame. So I can straighten this out on the stump where I've got a little bit of a funny jog, and so I've got a stump here with some different size holes. So I got that. That's about where I want it right now, and then the neck I'll come back to later.
So is the width of that all the same going from the stem to the end there, or is it a little bit tapered?
The thickness on the narrow axis is more or less uniform. It does taper to narrower from the front end to the back end on the wide axis.
Thank you. I thought I could see that.
So I'm just putting my texture die on the hammer now.
Oh, say that part again?
I'm putting my texture die on the hammer. So this is that die I was talking about. And
cool.
I try to make all these as simply as possible. So this one's literally just chiseled into the block and then heat treated.
And is that just mild steel or is that a tool steel?
No, it's I believe that's 4340.
Okay.
So mostly for tool steel, I'm using the race car axles, high tough, or for bigger stuff like that, I got a hold of a big block of 4340 for a steel a while back, and then in the future, when I need to, I'll buy some 4140, which would be the other kind of preferred material for stuff like that.
Cool, thanks.
So we're hot, stamp. Now I can just clean that edge back up with some light corrosion.
That's a pretty nice quick connect contraption you have there for the texturing die.
Thank you. I know I thought of someone else. Most of my best ideas came from someone else's better idea.
Well, I reckon that's how we learn most things, isn't it?
Could be. At least that's worked well for me. There's a lot of shoulders out there to stand on, and I try to keep my shoes off and socks on.
Yeah.
So the last thing to do on this handle is touch mark. I haven't figured out a real safe way to do it under the hammer where I won't double stamp it by accident. Because even though I can do single hits with all sorts of tooling, I always seem to double stamp my touch mark. So I do this by hand. I really should just make one for the fly press. But, you know, we have our own priorities.
Oh, yeah. Can't get to everything.
No, there's always a running list.
Yep.
So now is the part of the program where we decide whether we have enough time for me to do some quick trimming and grinding, or if you want me to do a, who's the chef who would always have one in the oven ready to go?
Julia Childs.
Julia, I can Julia Childs this if you'd like.
Well, It's 1:08. I'm not sure what Kellen's normal plan is for the time on these, because I know that they vary. Kellen, you want to jump in about timing here?
Sure. We definitely have time. I appreciate Julia Child, but I'd say let's just take this one from start to finish, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, no problem. That's not a problem. I can make it. I can make the boring parts fairly quick, where I can just jabber over them. One thing interesting that I didn't realize that I just learned the other night when I brushed up on that spec sheet is supposedly, according to the sheet, you can increase the corrosion resistance of 304 by annealing at 1900 and then water quenching. So the fact that there's only like 0.03 to 0.1 carbon in it makes me not worry about quenching, because that's nothing. Mild steel has 0.18 or 0.2% carbon. So if quenching more helps corrode less, then why not?
Great.
So now that I've got this forged out, I'm going to lay out with my rule. Just one last check to make sure that the neck's pretty straight. Do a little quick cold straightening. This point is when I kind of want to start getting fuzzy with the straightening. That looks good. So I'll usually just take a 12-inch rule and lay it down that center line, and hopefully that lines up with my dart. And then I love these Welder's silver pencils, if you can see that.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
great.
They're awesome.
And they're so much cheaper at the welding shop than if you try to buy them on the internet.
Exactly. I have mine in a mechanical pencil form.
Oh, that's nice. I've not, well, maybe I've seen that, but I haven't advanced that far yet. Maybe one day I'll catch it.
I love how they can write right through the water on the metal too. It's fantastic.
Yeah. The one problem is that they're so good that sometimes even wiping them vigorously with alcohol will not take them off of a finished product.
Yep.
So I'm just kind of arbitrarily putting a perpendicular line close to where the widest spot is. I might make a couple lines like that. And then from there, I figure out where I've got the least amount of material. So I've got just over 2 inches there and just under. So I'm going to mark this to match the other side. And then I'm going to do the same thing up here. And so now I'll just connect the dots. I know this is riveting.
Oh, I think it's good for those of us that are making things like this a lot, and those of us who don't, just to see these little detailed processes are really important.
I agree. I don't know if they're the most fascinating thing, but they are important. So just looking at my back edge here, that's pretty close to even, which I don't always get. So I usually let that kind of tell me what the back edge wants to look like, and then I'll just, even that line out with the sander. But I'll cut this material off. Sometimes I'll leave these round, but I don't find them to be as useful functionally. I really like a straight edge to the blade. So we'll go over to the saw. And you could also do this on a nice B3 Beverly shear, which if anyone's got one for sale, let me know. But a vertical band saw will do a good job. Zip disc will do a great job.
Nice.
And you could do this with a chisel too.
Well, you'll have to repeat that after you're done sawing there.
Sorry, I was saying you could do this with a chisel too, depending on your level of masochism.
Gotcha. Well, we've had a couple of people who've had to step out because they've got to get to their days, but people are really enjoying your demonstration.
Well, thank you. I'm glad they could stop by and check it out and watch me do my silly thing here.
Well, it's always fun to see how other people make stuff, in my opinion.
So I'm going to break my rule about respirator and just do a little quick climbing here for the sake of time. More than shaking her head at me. So a note about grinding, always keep your abrasives separated if you're going to grind stainless. You don't want to contaminate the stainless with a belt or a disc that's ground carbon steel.
And for folks who are unfamiliar with what you mean by that, can you give a little explanation as to some details there?
Sure. So as you may know, experientially, whenever you grind, some of the material you're grinding will end up on the abrasive and glazed into the surface of the grit. And when you then take a piece of stainless and grind it with that same abrasive, it will smear some of the carbon metal onto the surface of the stainless, and that carbon metal will rust there on the surface of the stainless. So that's what I mean by contamination.
Great, thank you.
So all my stainless abrasives are marked with white paint pen in the shop so I can tell them apart.
Good idea.
So for this next little bit, I've been able to get away with just a 60 grit flap disc. And, 80 is better to disappear, for the marks to disappear in the forge. But 60, when it's kind of a somewhat spent disc, comes out pretty shiny.
So do you mean you're taking off the just the edges, the burrs, or are you going to go for the scale as well?
No, I'm not going to remove any scale from the surface, except I'm just going to grind the profile.
Gotcha.
I will grind the bevel on the edge. And then I'll finish it up with a file here. Knock the corners off with a little draw filing.
So do you want to keep the same thing in mind with the files, Abe? Only have stainless files?
I have not, and I haven't found it to be a problem. I think there's just not enough heat and friction occurring with the file that I don't think you're really glazing material into the teeth of the file the way you would into the friable particles of a silicon or ceramic-based abrasive. So I don't go that far. I know some people do have a separate set of files.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not that successful, so I can't afford it. Yeah, I don't think it's as important with the files.
Yeah. We have, we're going to wrap up the auction here, folks. If you're not watching the chat, we have Bob at $160 going once, and keep your eyes on the chat. If you want to jump in, do it now or forever hold your peace, folks.
Yay, Bob!
Oh, we have 165, 175. Bob really wants this spatula. Looking pretty nice so far.
It's amazing what you can pull out of a crunchy piece of forged sheet metal that had a bunch of weird stuff going on a minute ago.
Yep.
With just a little careful grinding and cutting. So the next,
John and Bob are fighting here. We got John is up to, oh my goodness, John went 180. Bob is at 200.
oh my goodness. Well, I better finish this one out nice then.
The pressure's on, Abe.
Yeah. So the last thing I'll do before I heat it back up is I'm just going to knock these corners off the handle here and give them a light radius so that they're comfortable in the hand. There's not a great way to forge those like that, so I just do it with a grinder.
Again, for people in the crowd, we have Bob is at $200 bid on the spatula. I think we should give it maybe 5 more minutes or something before we close out the bids. Oh, we have the host $200 going once. Bob says 225. He really wants this. $225 going once. That's a pretty nice texture on the handle too.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, 225 going once. We're gonna do 225 going twice, folks. Bob is gonna get it.
Come on, someone else. I know someone wants it. You can do it.
Someone can get it to 250. Come on, anybody out there? 230. We have it in the chats. 225 going twice. I'm gonna count to 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, that's it. 225 going to Bob. Woo, 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 woo.
Thank you so much. I'm really tickled.
And thank you, Abe, for making this awesome lesson wonderful, and the beautiful spatula, and donating your time and your work to the Northwest Blacksmith Association. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much. I'm tickled to do it for y'all, and I think what you're doing here is great. I love these online demos. I think it's an awesome idea to get around all the things we're dealing with and keep sharing the craft. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. So anyway, let's finish this spatula so Bob can have it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use, I used to do this step just in a swedge block or a little swedge that would go in the hardy hole of my anvil, but I've since started doing it on the power hammer. I use the same fuller that I used to do all my spreading, and I'll turn the hammer on. You can see the swedge. So it's probably like a 1 1/8, 1 1/4 diameter, roughly. And so this is to cup the handle material to give it that soft, voluminous contour. And I find that it really doesn't do much to diminish the texture, especially with stainless. So you get a little twist sometimes, a lot of times. So the best way I figured out how to deal with that is just with a rawhide, and I'll lay it flat, and I'll kind of hit at an angle on whichever side, and it'll help if it's hotter. But yeah, I'm always impressed with how well the texture can survive that. Now, on the note of the ground surfaces, the one thing to be aware of when you're heat blending color or color matching on stainless is it takes a lot longer. You know, it's stainless because it doesn't like to oxidize, so it doesn't like to oxidize from heat either, which is really nice because you don't have a lot of scale to brush off. But it means that you have to really bake the snot out of it if you want to blacken up a ground area. So fortunately, the handle process here requires a good couple of heavy heats to get you to the final shape. So they usually color up good. The edges of the spatula, I usually just leave them shiny or they'll show some heat color. And they're thin enough areas that they kind of disappear once it's all finished. But I could bake them back up, but especially on thin stuff like that, you have to heat it quite a bit to get anything beyond like a yellow or purple heat color, tertiary, transient oxide. So I'm just going to straighten this out a little. And I'm not hitting straight down on it because I don't want to collapse that shape. I'm kind of hitting obliquely on the edges. So that's pretty straight now. Straight enough. And I can go to the stump if I need to hit against the textured side, and I can actually use my keen in the groove. That's how I would have done it without the power hammer, is put it in a swedge block and use the keen like this one to form it.
Okay, someone is asking, they thought that you needed to do some special heat treating properties for the, or heat treating to the stainless for its properties to manifest. And you were talking about the quenching being part of that.
So that's actually a new piece of knowledge to me, that I just gleaned from a spec sheet last night, is that to increase the resistance properties, you can anneal it to 1900. And I don't know, sometimes in the spec sheets they use the word annealing a little different than how I might use it, because I think of that as bringing it up to a temperature and then bringing it down very slowly, whereas they say anneal at 1900 and then quench in water to cool rapidly. Does not sound like annealing in my mind, but I'm not a metallurgist again. Now that's just to increase the resistance properties even further. If you wanted to maximally ensure the resistance properties of this after you were done, you would do what's called passivating, which is a process I'm not terribly familiar with, but I believe it involves acid etching off all the oxides, and then you can patina or seal it however you want from there. I do not passivate any of my stainless work. For exterior stuff, I do find that you get some browning, but it'll never go beyond a certain point. With the kitchenwares, stuff that stays inside, I've never had any problem with any of them showing any, rust spots or browning of any kind. And I'll wash them with soap and leave them sitting in the sink and all that stuff. So I haven't had an issue with it. There's no, I'm sure there's a way to heat treat them to maximize their resistance, but it's pretty sturdy stuff, even if you're being haphazard with it. So this next step, I'm gonna just kick the tip of the handle material out over the horn a little. My rawhide, I'm going to put a light bend in the whole handle. I overbent that. Oh boy. Trying to maneuver around the camera and I'm making a mess of things. So that's not an elegant process at the best of times, but that's a pretty good shape.
Yeah,
it worked out better than I thought it would, because it started going sideways at first. And now with that little bit of just below red heat in the neck here, this is the perfect time to put the curve in the neck. So I'll come over my stump. You could do this on a fly press if you wanted. But I would try to do it, say, over a horn, for instance, because you're just not going to have the same kind of three-point contact as you do in a hollow. And so that's a pretty pleasing curve to me. I've got maybe a little bit of a funky twist going on, but I can try to get that out now. Yeah, I like that. So the next thing I will grab, you can use a pair of butter, whatever you call these cutting tongs, on the back end. You take your ring off the other tongs first. I can hold that like that, check my straightness.
So that's a real nice feature to wrap the handle around like that. How many research and development spatulas did you make before coming up with that design?
Well, the genesis of the design I owe to a drunken spoon forging competition in Philadelphia. But the refinement did take many renditions. But the original idea of drawing out that material flat, cupping it, and bringing it around on itself did come from that first very spontaneous, of course, I did say spoon forging competition. I definitely chose not to make a spoon that night. Said, I don't need a spoon. I want a spatula. That's something I don't have. So I made myself my first. I still use it every day, or nearly every day, but it's not nearly as elegant as these ones, I think. But good reminder. So I'm just getting my torch lit here. So the last step is to put the angle between the blade and the neck. And I'm going to remember not to touch that because I didn't quench it. So I'll heat right here at that transition point because I want some of the flat material to bend, not just the neck. And I got to get it really hot because if it's only a red heat, then the black part next to it's what will bend.
Interesting. So you're getting just a little bit of the flat part to bend along with the handle.
Yeah, ideally, the handle doesn't bend at all. It's all happening right at that transitional point where the material
basically the dart.
Yep, exactly. Just a little bit of a twist. And then I'll set it on my layout table and I can sight down it and see how it lines up. That gives me a good reference point. Another way I'll look at it is I'll hold it up and look at it from the front with the blade flat on the table to see if it's straight.
Nice.
And I'm happy with it. So. And then the last thing I'll look for is how far the tip of the blade kicks up off the table. That's about the minimum I would want. You don't want it too extreme because you have to think about how you would hold it over the lip of a pan.
Right.
But that gives you pretty good access right there. So I'm going to call that right like that.
I've really been enjoying this, Abe, because we just had our very first assignment due last week, or was it Monday? And we had to have spatulas.
Oh, nice.
So after spending weeks doing this very same thing in my own head and at the forge, it's wonderful to see you make a spatula as well.
Well, that's very fortuitous. I'm glad that it's something you could apply to your own practice.
Yeah, because I've had a very selfish want to make my own self a lovely spatula, and I made a whole bunch.
Nice. Yeah, you know, I've made dozens of these since that first one. I've never bothered to replace it. I don't know why. I probably should.
Well, you know, if it works and you like it, then that's what matters, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and it worked.
So is this wire brush a specifically stainless steel wire brush that doesn't touch any mild steel with stainless? There you go.
Yeah, and I do this because I'm oblivious otherwise, unless there's big loud lettering on everything to let me know don't do that, dummy. So
we've all been there before.
This one's pretty worn out. I kind of took the life out of it yesterday brushing those other ones, but I could probably get one more spatula out of it. So I won't do the whole finishing process for time's sake here, but I do what I call a black oxide finish, which is sort of a finish I use on a lot of forged goods, where I'll scrub it really good with a brush like this. And then I take some, depending on if it's stainless or mild, I'll use either like 120 or 80 grit hand sandpaper, and I'll just lick the whole thing over to hit the high spots and raise up all the high spots a little, and then this will get a hot wax finish.
What kind of wax do you put on?
Beeswax.
Okay.
So I just have pucks of it that I've melted down from. Thankfully, my parents have harvested some honey for the last decade or so.
Wow.
And more than a decade, golly, it's been over 15 years, I guess. And So I get lots of wax from them. And so I put the piece in the toaster oven at 275 for 20 minutes or so, and then rub it down with the beeswax. And it's a remarkably resilient finish, you
Nice.
know. And for this, really, it's just to make the color look better, because you don't need that protection on the stainless. But, you know, now it looks dull and gray, and then just having that coat of clear material on it just makes a huge difference for how that color turns up. So
I might have to hit you up for some of that beeswax.
Oh yeah, I'll put it in the mail on Monday.
I'll give you my address.
Yeah, please. Well, that's about all there is
in right here. Just because you had that other one out here. Abe, could you take a few minutes and maybe just describe verbally the process that you use when you do like your other spatula that has the handle that comes off of a corner?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, if you were to do it by hand, so here's what he's referring to. I call these like a side swipe. You would set that shoulder. Here's my marks for 2.5 from the end, 4 from that end. And I would set on the far shoulder of the anvil and drive that in and drive 2 perpendicular sides into the shoulder of the anvil to butcher in from those 2 adjacent sides, leaving the other 2 sides flat. And that would push my mass at the end off center. And then I'd just draw the taper in the same way that I would. When I do it on the hammer, and I use my big flatter, and I'll actually set the flatter on the bottom die, and I'll hit, turn, back and forth on those 2 sides to drive in that shoulder. And then I'll even draw that out a bit right there on the hammer. And then I might finish that taper up, you know, by hand or with the crown dies on the smaller hammer. And then the only other difference is when I spread that material, instead of setting that dart on the center, I'm going to spread. Well, okay, sorry, there is another difference. So that ends up, instead of you spreading on the flat, you're going to end up on the diamond because your neck is offset to that corner. So I will take a few blows to flatten these corners out, and I'll just peck these corners a tiny bit so they're not sharp. And then I make this flat enough that I can land my fuller on that flat without flying off one side or the other. And I'll start spreading until it's the same thickness as the neck. And that's when I come in and I'll set that dart just to the one side. Set the dart, spread, reset the dart back and forth until I've got the blade. That
Cool.
Sound good?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course.
I'd like to just grab this opportunity while we still got the audience before folks are running out, to say a couple of things. One, just thank you, Abe, for having us to your shop. This is awesome. Maybe you still got a little time for a shop tour when I'm done. I know everyone sure loves to like see where people are working. But I would say, Bob, who won this, Bob, if you can go to NWBA, I guess it's blacksmith.org under our donate button. You can put in that $225 as a donate through PayPal. And I believe we have your info, but you could also email the webmaster there through our website and just give us your shipping info, and we'll get it all down the line, and hopefully you get that coming just as soon as it can. But I would also just kind of add to everybody, this was the first demo that we had that had a different registry process in the beginning. And just for people who aren't familiar why we're doing that, we have a drawing that is going to start kind of today, and it runs through the whole month of October. And then the first Saturday in November, we will be
drawing kind of a door prize for anyone who has come to these demos. Right now, the grand prize is a set of quick and dirty beginner tongs. I believe there's 6 of them in that set. There's probably going to be 2 other prizes. We're still kind of working on what those are exactly. But every time that you come to one of these Zoom things and register is another chance to win. So the more you come to, the greater your odds. Awesome. Well, I'll back out of here again and let Lisa take you on a shop tour. Thank you so much.
Well, I wish I could come and take a real shop tour maybe one of these days soon. Oh, your sound is off there, Abe.
Here I am. I was just saying, anytime you just give me a call and come on down from Illinois, Tennessee will welcome you.
Awesome. I can visit Ann too.
Exactly.
We'll have to get Duff and his family on the bus, and I'll make a big trip.
That would be a good time. That would definitely be a hoot and a holler.
So you got 2 power hammers there. What else you got, man?
Well, let me just flip this camera back around and show you. So I've got the torch on the pilot light stand gas saver. That's a really good investment for $150 or so. Those things are great. The gas forge just kind of moves around where I need it. I've got a coal forge I built back here that I use periodically. I do share my shop, so this is my shopmate's little forging corner there, but I've got some hand tools back here. Number 5 Karachi fly press.
Nice.
This is the tire hammer that I started my business with, and I've since sold it to my shopmate. But I did a lot of work with that. Those things are power horses. Got little drill and lathe area. Some bench space under pallet racking. I have a love-hate relationship with pallet racking, but I think it can be a good thing. This is Andrew Mears surface grinder.
Nice.
I love this saw. I got it for $450 from New Jersey. Rescued it from hurricane damage. And got a little saw line stock bay area here. And a couple of welders. And 4x8 layout table, welding station, and grinder. And that's about it.
Sweet.
So,
that's a beautiful setup, man.
Well, thank you. Well, it's been a perennial work in progress, and but it's been a great space and really a great place to grow my business and learn how to do this thing for myself, you know. So
yeah, we have some comments. That was a steal on that saw, and your shop is super clean.
Oh, thank you. I know. That was one of my best auction deals ever, was that saw.
Yeah,
for sure.
Did it come with those the tables?
No, I had to cut. Well, it came with the little one, the little green one there, and another piece of roller, but I cobbled together the rest of that stuff elsewhere.
When did you start your business?
February of 2016.
Okay.
Oh, I have a random request. I don't know if there are any Russian readers or speakers on the line still or at all, but I was really curious what that said, if anyone knew.
Kate and Anton, can you see that? Can you tell us can you translate what that is? That's a pretty awesome sticker.
Yeah, I got that in a big bundle of stickers and thought it was appropriate to put on the Soviet hammer.
I know that they're here in the room, but I'm waiting to see if they put it in the chat. I don't think they've left yet.
I just gave Kate, I just allowed her to talk. So Kate, if you know what that says, unmute yourself and tell us, please.
I hope it's nothing bad.
Kate writes a small bear.
Oh,
That's perfect.
so nice.
Oh, that is absolutely perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you
Oh.
so much for translating for me. Uh, that's great.
Kate, that's the name of your dog, I think, huh?
How would you pronounce that if I were to read the Cyrillic?
Mishka.
Oh, very cool. Mishka. Well, I did name this hammer Valentina after Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space. But
Wow.
Mishka's a pretty good nickname, too.
Awesome. Well, what do you think, Abe? What do you think, Kellen? Do we have more questions? Do we have anything to add? This has been wonderful.
I don't have much else to add. Just again, a heartfelt thanks from all of us here in the Northwest to you guys over in Tennessee for this one, and for everybody else worldwide who has joined us today. This is a great demo.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with y'all, and I hope everyone got something out of it. And it was fun for me, and glad that the bidding went good and going to a good cause. So thank you.
We actually have one more question from Anthony Rich. If you could describe the heat coloring that you mentioned earlier.
Sure, I could probably even show it to you. Well, you can't really see it too well on there. There's just a little bit of a gold tint on that, but if you've ever made knives or done heat treat, there we go, there it is. Let me see if I can get this in focus. You see that gold and blue there on the edge? I know it's probably difficult to see, but if you've ever done heat treating and tempered things after you heat treated them, you know that color range of the temper colors going from about 550 to 750. You get a gold to like a straw, to a gold, to a purple, to a sort of electric blue, and then silver. And so in the stainless, you get those colors at a much higher heat than you would in a regular carbon steel. So you see the sort of oil slick rainbow. That's what I was talking about. So I might have had that edge, 14 or 1500 degrees for a little while, but it wasn't long enough to oxidize it black.
Charlie Montrose asks, on that texturing block that you had on the table there, what was the gap between the slots?
Which block?
I'm not sure. The one that you used.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like the spacing between the cuts?
Did you get those cuts in there with just an abrasive wheel, or?
No, that's all done with a chisel. I did that all hot. I drew it all out with the trusty silver pencil, and then I had the block annealed. I had annealed it under coal, and then I lined it with a chisel, and then I heated it up and chiseled them in deeper hot. So you definitely could do that with an abrasive wheel. I find that I'm probably as or more accurate with the chisel. But yeah, you don't want to go super duper deep if you can help it, because it just limits the thickness of material you can use it on. Now, it is cool to take like this one, for instance, which has some pretty deep chisel marks. And if you've got some 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch thick material, you can smash it in there and get just amazing relief. But a lot of the stuff I'm using these on is closer to 3/16 or 1/8 inch thick. So less is more sometimes.
Perfect. Well, audience, we got any last minute questions for Abe here before we sign off? Well, I don't see anybody jumping on that offer. So, Abe, just one more time, thank you so much